I've asked my panel to join me on the stage. Ian Akehurst, who is Vice President of Marketing and Analytics and Media with KAYAK. Jason Chebib, who's the Vice President Consumer Planning for Diageo in North America. And Manjiry Tamhane, who's the CEO of Game Theory. Welcome, everybody. Now, we've spent a bit of time this morning talking about creativity and data, and the title of this panel is Where Head Meets Heart. And I wonder, I went to the Cannes Lions Festival for the first time this summer and was struck, it's a festival of creativity, apparently, but was struck by the kind of overwhelming number of, data-centric media buyers, analytics firms. It looked like a very different type of industry to the one I'd sort of always imagined. And I wonder if the balance is right in your view. Have we swung too far away from creativity towards kind of an over-reliance on data? Are we building an industry of data scientists and not of creatives who really know how to forge a connection with consumers? Why don't I start with you, Ian? You guys have a particular product and particular marketing needs, but how important is it to forge that connection and be creative?
In terms of linking the creativity and data is key to KAYAK's success. Right. We're lucky as a company that we're a 500-person company, of which 400 are data analysts and engineers that are central to solving travel search problems for consumers. And culturally, we harness that information internally. And that comes through in some of the ways that we can use data in the content that we're producing. Mm-hmm. So understanding and communicating where are people looking to travel in the future. So New Year's Eve this year is a Saturday night. There are lots of people looking to travel for that, probably further afield than they have been in the past. So how can we leverage that insight and the data that we have in the content that we're producing? And I'm not going to jump the gun in terms of looking at what we've got, but Reykjavik, Iceland looks really good this year.
Booking my tickets tomorrow. But so the data informs the campaign or the forms of creativity in every sense.
Yes, it does, and the insights we can get out of that help inform a lot of content. And perhaps previously we've focused a lot today talking on planning data, execution, tracking analytics of campaigns, but we have that branch as well. But we also look at it from a content generation perspective.
Right. Okay. Manjiry, what about you? Am I asking the wrong question? Is in terms of the tipping of the balance or not?
Well, you mentioned Cannes, and I think Cannes was really exciting this year in the sense of embracing the balance between creativity and data. So creative data as a jury, it's only in its second year. And I think when I looked at the jury last year as an observer, it felt as though there was a lot of emphasis on the creativity, but then there might have been just one data point that was fueling an idea, and that might have been even retrospective. How do I get some data to retrofit this great creative idea that I've had? Which
isn't really the point, right?
Which is not really the point. Yeah. Whereas this year, I think the makeup of the jury was very much aligned around how do we look for campaigns and beautiful creative executions where data sits throughout the entire process. Mm-hmm. So not just the generation of the initial idea, but actually how that idea comes to life, how do we measure the success all the way through. And there were some great examples of that. So the Tennessee Tourist Board wanted to attract more people. They are competing with a whole series of different destinations. And they looked at, well, what are the reasons why people would want to come here? And what have we actually got within our state? And then they created a series of videos that showcased either music or food or the different elements of the culture within the area. They then took that and created real-time dynamic creative videos that landed. There were 2,000 different executions of that video. So that was great combination of data, technology and creativity being dynamically executed.
And targeted to the...
And very much targeted. So based on your behaviour online, prior to actually landing, or
which platform was it? On Facebook or something else?
No, I don't know the exact. I can't remember the exact platform,
right.
but it was looking at your online behaviour and then deciding, okay, well, you've visited sites where you are obviously interested in food or you're interested in the outdoors, and then dynamically created the video accordingly. And I thought that was fantastic execution.
Right, but are there enough examples of that? I mean, that sounds like an outlier, doesn't it?
I think we were told we had one of the smallest shortlists of any of the juries, because it was difficult to find examples where data runs throughout the entire strategy execution through to measurement.
Right.
So often we'd see great ideas, but we think about data and creativity. There's a big part of the so what.
Yeah.
Why have you done this? To what end? And if there was no clear objective, and even if your objective was to increase brand recognition, might not necessarily have been sales, but what was your key objective, and was there a so what factor at the end of all of that? So it's not just data and creativity, and I don't think it's an either or. These two things have been going hand in hand for decades,
right.
But we need to bring in the so what factor into all of that.
And impact, right. Jason, what about you? Is this the wrong question to be?
No, but before I answer it, I'd like to apologise to the room. So the reason this session started late was because I was late. And those who work with me, of whom there are some in the room, know that is not unexpected. Now, the point is...
It is UN week. Yeah, it's
it is
hard
UN
to get
week.
around.
See, that's an interesting data point. It's UN week. How much data did I have at my disposal for planning my journey here today?
Yeah.
I had more data than I could have looked at in 3 journeys, right? I had apps that told me how to get here. I had apps that told me what the traffic volume was going to be like. I was still late because I didn't ask the right questions and I didn't plan properly and I didn't set my objectives out up front. So there are points in the process at which data is the most important thing. There are points in the process at which creativity is the most important thing. They don't often sit side by side. They usually sit in sequence. You come up with a strategy based on your analysis of data. Within that, your strategy is only as good as the questions that you ask. So at Diageo, one of the things that we're growing in our consumer planning function is creating the ability to ask brilliant questions, and across our marketing department. The better the questions that you ask, the more you'll be able to do with your data. What comes after that, to borrow the analogy of Byron Sharp, he talks about it being like architecture, that there are certain principles that underlie whether a building will stand up or fall down. And they are questions of physics, for example. What you actually design and build on top of that, the designer's vision might look like a shitty tower block or might look like the Taj Mahal. There is an element of that that has nothing to do with the laws of physics and everything to do with the creative mind. So you are there as a marketer, as a planner, to put a platform for great creative to happen, and it's your job to make sure that platform won't fall down and be robust. So you need to understand at each point in the process, what's the relationship between data, which is also a kind of stupid word in some ways, right? And creativity, right? Data's just numbers. Data's just raw material. It's just stuff. It's what you do with it that matters,
right,
and what you find out about it. So I'll give you an example. We were looking for which female athletes were, not at Diageo, which female athletes were inspirational to women who take part in sports. In looking at the data with that objective in mind, we actually found out that none of the female athletes were as aspirational to them as the male athletes, as the male athletes who are successful and kind of celebrities in their own worlds. Now that's something that came from the data. You only got there by asking the right questions and by looking in the right places and by being open to the right sources of data. If somebody hadn't thought to ask that question or look at that data, we'd have never have known that, and we'd have picked the best female athlete we could have found, and we'd have always been tier 2 in their aspiration. And somebody else who'd picked the male athlete would have won out over us.
So when
in a like-for-like exercise.
So when planning a campaign at Diageo, what are the sorts of questions? I mean, there must be a million questions, but
I was going to say, how long have you got?
Yeah, but give us an example of if you can, of the sort of the data points that you look for before you then start building the creative on top of it.
So one of the kind of areas that we're just starting to look at, and I think everybody's just starting to look at, is the question of habit. So how are habits formed? And this is a very dicey area for a company like ours. But habitual behaviour, without the drinking in it, so habitual behaviour of where you go, who you see, what you do, it's very important to understand that, and you can gather data points about that are very informative. That would be a question that we and others would start to be asking now. And if anybody hasn't read Charles Duhigg's book on the power of habit, I strongly recommend it because it's very, very interesting. And if any of you want to give up smoking, I really advise that you read it because it's really, really interesting. So that would be one type of question. But as you say, there are so many angles in, and the best planners and the best marketers are the people who are best at finding the most relevant angles in.
Right.
And you have to change as you go into the data. Data tends to be a snapshot. Your data, you can see your data now and in the past. You can't see your data in the future. I think the hardest thing about being a person in marketing who works with data is that you are trying to predict the effect on lots of people's emotions in the future of hard business decisions that you're making today. Changes to your packaging, changes to your communications platform, changes to your creative work, changes to how your brand shows up, which are made against really, really hard business criteria often. You're trying to predict how will those decisions affect human beings' emotional responses to your brands now in a year or 2 years or 5 years' time, and that's incredibly difficult.
So it hasn't changed. I mean, this is for consumer research, which has been around for decades, right, or century, 100 years.
No, we can do research and find data cheaper, quicker, better, more accurate, and we can do more of it at once. So if you talk to a scientist, they will tell you that they are always trying to cut down the room for error, but it never goes away. The next time could always be different in theory, right? Could always be different, but you're trying to stack up enough examples, data-based examples, that show that the principles that you believe in scientifically are true. And that's what we do. We do it time after time after time. That's why the Ehrenberg-Bass work in Byron Sharp's book was so valuable in 2010 when it came out, because it's the first time someone had really looked at a lot of data and gone over and over and over and over and over again, in all these categories, in all these countries, in all these years, this was true. Now, could it be different for you the next time you do a marketing campaign? Theoretically, yes. Where are you going to place your bet? Where are you going to put your money? You're always gambling. Marketing is a gamble because you're future-facing. Yeah, you're looking to the future. So where are you going to place your money? You're going to place it on the outcome that's been proven 100 times in 100 places with 100 brands, or are you going to place it on your one brand next year according to your strategy that you've dreamt up? You choose.
And it's sequential. I mean, before you think about the campaign, you have to know who your customer is, what you're selling. I mean, there is this sort of sequential process. That's what Jason's saying.
From our perspective, is it sequential? Yes, but the availability of data gives you a very, very fast feedback loop.
Right.
So it is.
So you can change things immediately if they're not working in the way that you want.
In a very, very short term. One of the interesting pieces Jason just sort of spoke about was that really resonated with me was the fact that when we're making a marketing investment, we are making a bet, and we have to acknowledge that we are making a bet, because people don't always respond rationally and as you would expect. And as such, when I think about a media investment that we're making, we have to be cognizant of not only what do we think the expected return is, but what is the variance around that? How big a risk are you taking? Are you engineering large amounts of risk into your marketing strategy, or are you diversifying and mitigating that risk? And you know, KAYAK as a brand, we're lucky, we're a technology brand. In the US, we cut the cord about 18 months ago. We cut off all of our broadcast, TV, mass media, and shifted to a model where all of our media is served on demand. So in on-demand environments, in streaming environments, both video and radio, served information on Facebook display sites.
Why did you do that?
So when we were looking at that,
that's pretty bold, isn't it? TV advertising.
It's a pretty bold bet, and I think we're one of the few brands that can do that. We have a lot of insight that, you know, KAYAK as a brand, and the people we want to be placing those bets on as potential users are frequent travelers. A frequent traveler is worth so much more to us than an infrequent traveler that it pays back. And people's propensity to travel when it's distributed across the population is heavily skewed. So when we were looking at that investment, we said, well, frequent travelers, they're consuming less live media, they're reducing their TV consumption, they're catching up, they're watching on demand, they are taking content with them. We need to be in those environments. Now, in doing that, we recognized it was a concentrated risk because we were going on a smaller target, but the expected return we thought was going to be probably about equal. If anything, we thought there might be a small upside to getting people to use the product more often. And what we saw was actually it was net positive for us.
Right.
But when we were making that decision, we had to be heavily cognizant of that risk that we were taking.
So you got better results by net.
Yes,
yeah.
we did, and I think that's, you know, part of that is the power of targeting.
So you heard it here first. You don't need to, no longer need to advertise on television for a better result. No, it's just in specific circumstances.
In specific circumstances,
Right.
I mean, if you look at people's propensity to travel across the population, that's very skewed in comparison to, let's take some of Clorox's products, which are more evenly distributed. That would probably be a bad strategy for a Clorox brand.
Do you think that we're going to see more of that, more brands shifting away from television because of the targeting?
You know, I don't want to speak for Ian, but I would sort of guess that there was a very strong strategy that sat behind that we're going to turn off TV, but we've got a very robust plan of what we're going to do instead of TV. Yeah. I think I've seen brands that have come off TV because of the budget pressure.
Right.
And then what you see is either a very slow erosion or a very quick erosion, because there's nothing to replace this. There's no strategy. Now, in Ian's case, that they could afford to go down the route of what I'll call target, tailor, personalised. So you've got the data to be able to go, this is the right individual that I need to speak to. You've got the ability to get their frame of mind in terms of tailoring it according to time of day or location, all the way through to making it very personal in terms of these are destinations that you are most interested in. So if you can replace it with and have the availability of data to be able to target, tailor and personalise, that's great. But if you're a brand that's been on TV for years and years and years and you've built up this equity, and then you suddenly come off air and you don't replace it with anything else, then you will start to see an erosion. But then TV is not just about linear. It's about how do you create engaging video content through lots of different channels, lots of different platforms. So, you know, don't think about TV in the sense of switch on the TV and there's an ad. Consumers are consuming video content in lots of different ways. And there's lots of options for getting engaging content out there.
And TV now, I think Sky in the UK has a product, Comcast in the US is working on a product of delivering targeted ads home to home, right? I mean, that capability is there and presumably will become more pervasive. Would you ever go back to TV with that in mind, or are you happy with the... And was there resistance internally when you made that decision?
No, I think, again, because we're a technology company, if you were launching a technology brand today, I don't think the automatic go-to is TV. And you know, we still have one of our original co-founders is the CEO, very strong tech focus, and a lot of the media consumption of our employees was avoiding linear TV. So there was actual encouragement, as long as we recognise what the risk was, and okay, if we need to, there's a point in time we can correct. But there was an acceptance and understanding because of our culture, because of the types of employees we have. There are the new environments we can go into. And that's, as a technology brand, where we felt we should be.
I kind of disagree slightly with that, because I've seen a lot of startups who spent the first year or so very much investing in online activities, and then realizing that in order to actually break through as a brand, yes, there's lots that you can do online, but have then actually turned around and said, right, if we actually want to break through, get to some degree of reach, it's a very different TV strategy. It's a very different video distribution strategy. But they do look to it as a way of actually breaking through and building the brand. And we've seen a lot of...
well, Google did it, right? Airbnb.
Yeah, there's a lot of brands that are startups that have used TV as a mechanism to actually get themselves the brand recognition up there.
Jason,
So I'm going to be a bit gladiatorial. I'm going to call Ian out on this one.
Here we go. This is good. Okay.
Go on.
Because actually, you used a very interesting metaphor. You talked about cutting the cord. And it's the right metaphor, actually. But the bit that you didn't say, or we didn't acknowledge, is that the KAYAK brand was incubated in the womb of television, right? So it was built in television.
Yes.
What you actually find, regardless of the medium you use, your sales today come from your advertising for years and years ago. So that's there are lots of studies to show how this works, and if you want one, I'll show you one afterwards. But you actually, it isn't just a short-term effect. Advertising and communications don't just have a short-term effect. People store up these things for when they need them. Now, there are lots of great reasons why you should be focusing on your digital media space. You are where people are looking. Right? That's the biggest thing, first and foremost. And look, this guy's marketing needs are 1,000 times more complex than mine and Diageo's, because the complexity of the travel search world, that whole world is so complicated, not just in terms of how many people are looking for what, but the back-end algorithms of everything that you need to look after. I mean, God, it's a tough world, right? But here's the thing. If I said to you, here's some free television airtime for your brand, you'd go, I don't think you'd go, oh, I'm sorry, that's just not in my principles. You know, you'd go, thanks very much.
More than happy to take
I'll
free
put
stuff.
that out. So the question becomes, what are you using media for? Right? It's not about what media does. It's about the value media provides. And the reason why, and the subject of this talk is head versus heart. Are you making your not you personally, is one making one's media decisions based on head or heart? Are you secretly wanting to be that pioneering, bold marketer who goes, I did it, I cut the cord with television and I moved into digital because that's the future, without really understanding what you're really doing? Or are you actually being rational about it and judging each media on the value it provides in terms of reach, recency, and impact? How many people are you reaching? How often can you get in their face, in their ears, in their eyes? And is the medium suitable for impactful creative? Because some media are better than others. I can watch YouTube on my television set at home. When I'm watching a YouTube ad as a pre-roll on my television set at home, am I watching television or digital? Frankly, as a consumer, I couldn't give a shit. Right? I don't give a shit. Right? I really don't. And neither should we. That's the point. Use your head to judge media opportunities. Vayner is virulently anti-television, but actually when you press him, he will say, it's just too expensive. That's the actual beef that he's got with television. Not that it's a bad medium. Television has a bad rap, but it should have the same rap as every other medium. It should be judged by the same criteria.
You're not cutting your TV spending any time soon then?
Well, no, we're not.
Yeah,
no.
right, yeah.
Why would I?
Yeah.
If everybody did it, if everybody cut the cord, right? Television prices would plummet, and then everybody would want in again. It's like a stock or a share. It's demand-based. The value of television is demanded because it delivers something. It delivers large numbers of people quickly in an impactful way that they also largely accept. Bearing in mind the definition of what constitutes television is changing every week, right? Virtually with digital cable networks, offerings, channels, series.
But what about this? You know, there's a generation of kids who don't watch it. You fast forward through it, or they don't watch live. They sit down on appointment viewing. They watch when they watch Netflix or something else. I think.
I'm not sure that sure the data supports that. Yeah. A lot of them are actually. We look at the digital coverage. We look at the digital time that people spend with their digital devices, and oftentimes we assume that means they don't ever turn their television on. It's actually not true. A lot of them are actually multitasking. So they're watching television at the same time as they're on their mobile phone, their tablet, or they're using their game box, and actually they use that to watch television as well. So when you actually look at the data about viewing habits in most countries, the changes that are predicted are still very small and very slow.
Okay. You may want to respond. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Sorry. just to give you your opportunity here.
Thank you.
Yes.
You know, you make a fair point on, you know, KAYAK had a heritage of TV advertising in the US, and we had strong brand equity that you know, we've invested in that for the long term of the business, and continue to invest in marketing to build that long term. I'm not talking about not funding my retirement account, as it were. As it comes to live TV viewing, I think the declines on the people that we want to reach are at a point where we needed to take action. Now, you talked about going home and sticking YouTube on your TV, and that's an environment where you would definitely see KAYAK advertising. We strongly, you've seen enough of them. We strongly believe in the power of video, but the attentiveness that you get in the on-demand environment is much better than the attentiveness that you're getting in live TV. You've talked about the multitasking set. When somebody is requesting a piece of content, and you are in that content, and crucially, I think you have to be in the same form. So you need a video ad in video content, you need audio ads in audio, and please don't sell me a video ad on a website. When you're looking at that, the engagement, the attentiveness to it is much stronger. And for us, our target are moving there. And as a technology-first brand, we want to be there when they get there.
We're running short of time, and I want to make sure that if anyone has a question, they get a chance to ask a question. Just stick your hand up. If you want to get stuck into this this boxing match up here.
Friendly.
It's friendly. No questions. How about that? Oh, here we go. This one
here. Hello.
Oh. Is it working?
The pigeons
there you
of the war. What one word or phrase would you put into Marketing Room 101 and ban forever?
Wow. Buzzword ban.
I actually have an example of this. So I don't know who else reads Mark Ritson in Marketing Week. I love reading Mark Ritson. He's so angry all the time. It's great. It's like catharsis when it comes through. And he actually, he took exception this week with, he picked 5 marketing phrases that he would put into his equivalent of Marketing 101. And one of them was the old phrase, I know that half my advertising is working, I just don't know which half.
I've said that about 3 times today. Yeah. We can't ban that.
So I'm letting you off the hook.
No, that's good.
So, and he said, this is ridiculous, it's total bullshit, it's not how it works. Actually, it's about right. He also said it was ascribed to Lord Leverhulme, which, and he never said it, which is true. But just because we don't know who said it doesn't mean the phrase, that's not how you should judge the phrase. Point being, actually, about half your advertising and communications do work, because in most categories, you get over the average purchase cycle, you do get about 50% retention of your buyer base and about 50% loss to other brands. So in fact, that was a very prescient comment, and I would save that comment from room 101 of marketing, because it would give me great pleasure to make Mark Ritson even angrier than he already is.
I think I'd have to ban. I mean, this word was used so often in can submissions this year, the word algorithm.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
We've built an algorithm that's going to do X, Y, and Z for you, and it's just the most ridiculous statement. So that, for me, would have to be consigned to...
We'll throw that in there.
Can I have one more?
Yeah, sure.
Can I have the word ecosystem?
That's it.
Oh,
My God.
That is, I mean, talk about marketing giving itself airs and being arrogant.
You should only talk about it in the context of an Amazonian rainforest rather than
Exactly. To think of your marketing as a living, breathing thing that evolves with, it's just, oh my God, the height of bullshit.
Wonderful. I would actually ban the concept of dashboards.
Right.
I think there was a lot of interest in them, and they're a good way to present limited data, but they really put a limit on how you can dig in deeper and the types of questions that you can ask. So I would take all dashboards and
Except in cars. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of crucial there.
Well, we are out of time. So look, thanks for a very entertaining panel, guys. Thank you very much.